to another episode of Equalizer podcast. My name is William Acosta. It is a real honor to welcome Mr. Jim Lawler, a legendary figure in the CIA clandestine services. Jim's stellar 25-year career as a senior CIA operations officer brought him to the front lines of global intelligence, specializing in the recruitment of foreign spies and the battle against weapons of mass destruction. His leadership was pivotal in the takedown of the Iranian Nuclear Proliferation Network, one of the most dangerous black market enterprises in the history. Jim's work earned him some of the intelligence community's highest honors: the CIA Trailblazer Award, the Director Award from DCI George Tenet, the U.S. Intelligence Community Human Collector of the Year Award, and the Donovan Award, among others. An unprecedented recognition for his lifetime exemplary service. Equally impressive is Jim's track record as a mentor and instructor, guiding the next generation of intelligence officers and shaping curriculum that remains at the heart of the clandestine service training. Now acclaimed author, his novels include Living Lies, In the Twinkling of an Eye, and The Traitor's Tale. Bring the art and reality of espionage to life for readers around the world, blending operational insight with gripping narrative. Jim, thank you for joining us today. Your candor and wisdom and generosity sharing the lessons from your remarkable career truly enrich us all. Welcome to Equalizer, Jim. I really appreciate you taking your time to give us some of your experience inside the CIA clandestine services.
Thank you, William. I've been looking forward for quite a while to coming on your program, so I'm honored to be a guest today.
No, it's my honor to have a legend like yourself sitting in front of me at this time. I always listen to all of your podcasts. I have picked up a copy of your books, and I'm an admirer, more or less, of your truly admirable work that you have done over the years. What inspired you to pursue a career in the intelligence rather than become a lawyer, which is for what you studied?
It was totally by accident. I was in my last year of law school, and like anybody in their last year of college or law school or business school, you only have one thing on your mind, and that's, I need a job. And so I was going around interviewing with various law firms, and the CIA posted a notice that they were going to send a representative to my law school at the University of Texas in Austin, and they were looking for attorneys for the CIA's Office of General Counsel. So on a lark, I decided, that sounds interesting. I'll just go to that interview. So I went and I met a man named Mr. Bill Wood, and Mr. Wood and I talked for about 2 minutes, and suddenly he interrupted me. And instead of looking for an attorney, he asked me, he said, "Jim, have you thought about the clandestine service?" And this was 1976. And I said, "No, I have no idea what the clandestine service is." And he said, "Well, the fact is I think you'd be pretty good at this." So I was intrigued by that, and I took the application home that night. But reality hit me the moment I walked in the door, when I suddenly remembered my wife's mother is very ill, and there's no way we're going to move away from Texas to Washington, D.C., and then thousands of miles overseas. That's not going to happen. So the next day, with considerable sadness, I returned the application, and I said, the timing's just not good. So instead of pursuing a career in the CIA's clandestine service, I went into a family business, and I made a lot of money over the next 3.5 years, but became increasingly bored and frustrated, and learned that money is not everything in life. And I just found it very unfulfilling. And so after 3.5 years of that, my wife could only tolerate so much. And she said, Jim, either do something about your situation or stop your complaining. So I thought, okay. So I had kept Mr. Wood's card and I wrote him a letter and said, I spoke to you 3.5 years ago. Timing wasn't good, but now the timing is really good. I'd like to pursue the career in the clandestine service. And I should add, by this time, my wife's mother had sadly passed away, so we no longer had any real constraint on staying in Houston, Texas. So I wrote this letter, and 3 days later, I had a phone call at my desk where a young lady said, Mr. Wood has received your letter. Could you meet him at the Holiday Inn out on the Gulf Freeway this coming Thursday at 3 o'clock? So I said, sure. And I went, spoke to this gentleman for about 2 hours, and then he said he'd like to fly me to Washington. And a couple of weeks later, I went for 3 days of testing and interviews, came back, and about 3 or 4 months later, they had me come back for another round of interviews and tests. And about 3 or 4 weeks after that, I got a phone call, and they said, we'd like to offer you a job as a GS-11 operations officer, which meant absolutely nothing to me because I didn't know what an operations officer did. But I was so anxious to get away from Houston and the family business. I said, that sounds great. So my wife and I, we basically packed up the car a few weeks later, and she was pregnant with our first child. And we moved to Washington with me not knowing anything at all about what I was getting into or what a CIA operations officer does. But I can tell you this, I found out. And essentially, to not put too much of a shine on it, I'll be very blunt. A CIA operation officer manipulates, exploits, subverts, suborns people, and convinces them to betray their countries and become spies for the United States. And I found out that not only was I pretty darn good at it, but I enjoyed the hell out of it for 25 years. And now I still do some training of officers, and I write spy fiction.
Can you recall your first impressions during CIA training at the farm?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, some people don't like it, but it was, it's at a remote facility in Virginia, and it's very, very bucolic, very, there's water and forests and things like that. And every morning I'm was a long distance runner, so I'd go running and I enjoyed the training and some of the exercises. They pretend that you're in a foreign country and you have to target an instructor who role plays as an official of a foreign country, and you're taught how to develop the relationship to where finally you can pitch that person to commit espionage. And I enjoyed it. And one particular exercise I recall is where we have, over a series of meetings, I had developed this instructor, taken him along, and he was posing as an official of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for this particular mythical country. And so what I didn't know was that all of the instructors were really supposedly undercover as Ministry of Foreign Affairs officials, but in reality, they were members of the local security service. And their instructions were that as soon as we went into this pitch, that they were to pull out some handcuffs and basically arrest us and march us out of there where we would be interrogated. So I went into my pitch. Sure enough, the instructor whips out his handcuffs, says, I'm really a member of the local security service and I'm going to put you under arrest. And that's when I leaned forward and I said, this is so much better than what we've been talking about before. I am so glad that you are a member of that service because now you're worth so much more to me. And the instructor, he just kind of got a glazed look in his eyes and he slowly put those plastic handcuffs away. And he said he felt like he was a bird in front of a snake. And he was the only one to put his handcuffs away. And I was the only student out of 40 to basically escape being arrested and interrogated. I recruited my source.
Right, because part of the way that you teach, you have a methodology of teaching, and you say that you are very empathetic to
That's
people.
Correct. That's correct. In fact,
Your traits.
yes, I have a list of what I call 10 traits of a top class case officer or recruiter. The first trait is curiosity. I'm just a naturally curious person. I mean, I'd love to talk to you, William, more about your background. I mean, to me, it's fascinating, everybody's individual backgrounds. Second, you have to have a keen listening ability. You don't recruit people when you're talking. You recruit people when you're listening. Then third, you've already mentioned empathy, extreme empathy, to get inside your head and feel what it's like to be you and know what kind of stress you're under, because you don't recruit happy people. I never once recruited a happy person. You recruit people under stress. The fourth quality is patience. In one case, it took me 10 years to recruit a source, but I was patient, and eventually the stress came out and I recruited him in less than 30 seconds. The fifth quality is persistence and extreme, what I call laser-like focus. Being persistent, keep coming back at them, keep coming back at them. Number 6 is creativity. We could all use more creativity. Number 7, the careful observation of those stressors in people's lives. I used to be a rock climber, a mountain climber. And the way you climb the rock is you look for cracks in the rock so you could put your fingers and toes and go up the rock. And you can't do that from a long distance off. You have to get close and study the rock for the cracks. And so I got close to people and I'd study them for the cracks. And everybody has cracks. And looking for those psychological cracks, knowing which way I could go to take the relationship. The 8th quality is a harsh one. I call it ruthlessness. And what I mean by that is never forgetting what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you're not trying to become a friend with somebody just for the friendship. You're trying to recruit them to become a spy for the United States. And you don't forget that. And also, do not get discouraged if you get turned down. Because I've told my students, if you've never had a pitch turned down, you haven't pitched enough people. You've got to be constantly learning from your failures. I give another talk I call My Favorite Failures, because you learn more from failures than you do from success. Another quality is having a powerful or persuasive personality. And then finally, the one that's probably the most mystical is what I call having a mastery of the metaphysics. And by the metaphysics, I mean, I imagine almost an invisible neural link that goes out to me, to my target. And I pull that person into my orbit, and suddenly they and we're on a different plane of existence. Some people say it's my voice, that it's rather hypnotic. One of my assets once said, Jim, when you're talking to me, it's like my brain is in a warm waterbed. And that's what I want them to relax and essentially trust me, because trust is the foundation of any relationship, and especially in espionage. They have to trust me and I have to trust them, because we're doing something highly illegal or highly illicit in every country. You know, I'm going after foreigners. I don't recruit Americans. And so they have to trust me. But the metaphysics is literally it's metaphysical. It's a quality that a top recruiter has to basically capture that other person's mind, pull them in, and get them to do what you want them to do.
As a rookie officer, what mistakes did you make and how do you learn from them?
One mistake I made was not being persistent enough at times. I know towards the end of the Cold War, I pitched an Eastern European intelligence officer, and he didn't say no, and he didn't say yes. And I was in a hurry because I was leaving that particular post to go to another European country. And I know if I'd gone back and said, let's meet again tomorrow and chat about this, I know I could have gotten him. And that was just a stupid mistake on my part. He had even told me, he was dropping hints. Like he said, you know, my dad the other night said that he went to bed a communist and he woke up the next day as a capitalist. Well, I should have taken that as a sign that this guy is actually intrigued by the fact that communism is going away. And I made a big mistake of not persisting. You know, I was too much in a hurry to pack our things at our house. I should have gone after him and said, you know, I want to offer you a chance to be on our side and be on the winning side of capitalism rather than the losing side of communism. So that was a mistake I made. Other mistakes have been occasionally I would try and hurry the relationship a little too long, and I should have been more patient. I mentioned earlier I had a friend, a target actually, whom I recruited that took 10 years. And in those first 9.5 years, he was unrecruitable. He was fairly comfortable economically. He was single. His ethnic group was on top in his country. Well, things change historically in a lot of countries, and his ethnic group went out of power. Moreover, he had gotten married. In fact, I was best man at his wedding. That's how much we enjoyed each other's company, and he trusted me. But the woman that he married got very uncomfortable living overseas in her next post, thousands of miles from home. And so after a couple of years, she told him she wants a divorce, and she took their infant child and went home to her home country. Now, I've never been through a divorce, but I can tell you that divorce is one of those times where you are absolutely vulnerable psychologically, financially, and emotionally. It's a terrible time. And if there's someone like me in your orbit, and I sense that you've got access to something I want, I become your best friend. And so when he went back to his home country, he's been through a divorce, he goes back to his home country for the first time in a number of years. And as I said earlier, his ethnic group was no longer number one. And he wrote me an email one day and he said, "Jim, I could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I'll never be promoted again. How can I give allegiance to a country that treats its citizens like that?" I went, "Okay. How about you and I meet in this other country in Europe where your ex-wife and your baby girl is, and let's discuss about some other opportunities." So I met him. It took me about 30 seconds to drop cover. I was no longer a State Department officer. But I said, "Let me tell you, you've probably sensed this, but you've been protective of me, and for that I very much appreciate it. But I'm really a CIA officer, and I'd like you to join our team." And he said, "Suddenly I've got something to believe in." And sure enough, he did. He went back to his home country. He worked for us for a number of years. In fact, he was in his foreign ministry when 9/11 happened. And he said he became very emotional seeing those twin towers in New York collapse, burning and smoking and people jumping out. He said, I became very emotional, and my colleagues were wondering why was I so wrapped up in what was going on in America? And he said, what they didn't know was now I'm on your team. He meant that. And today he's retired. He's got a business in his home country. And he says his only regret is that he doesn't have a picture of me with a caption that reads, "Our founder." So, but it took me 10 years to get that particular guy.
That's excellent. How do you handle the moral weight of convincing someone to betray their country, even at the cost of their own life if they are discovered?
It's a horrible weight if, in fact, one of your people is. I've never had that happen to me. A good friend of mine, however, one of my really good friends, and after Aldrich Ames was arrested in 1994, he asked if I was at headquarters, and he asked me if I'd go around the compound and walk with him and talk. And he said that one of the Russian spies that Aldrich Ames had exposed and who had been shot, he said, I recruited that guy. And he said, if it hadn't been for me, that guy would still be alive. And my friend, he started crying. And I said to him, well, Francis, you didn't betray him. Aldrich Ames did. But it's truly, for a case officer, our top priority is always the security of the assets that we recruit and handle. I mean, it's a sacred duty that we have. But fortunately, none of my people that I recruited were ever executed. I had some that were arrested through no fault of mine or no fault of their own, and we had to intervene at top levels to get them out, and we did. We got them out. So it's a moral, spiritual commitment that we make to our sources, and we mean it. Other services may not mean it, but we mean it, and we'll go to hell and back to rescue them. In fact, that's the theme in most of my spy novels, was once we've made that commitment, we're coming to get you and get you out.
What is the most important lesson new officers should know about human intelligence work? And I ask this question freely because of the changes of technology, the changes in the modus operandi of the intelligence services worldwide, including China, Cuba, Russia, and others, that has changed. They became almost like different than they used to operate during the Cold War.
You're right, William. I mean, I can name a few things that are totally different from when I was in the service. Well, let's just look at social media, Facebook and LinkedIn. We didn't have that when I was pursuing targets. And nowadays, we used to have to recruit people that were friends of a target or somebody that knew them so they could say, well, William is going through a hard time. He's going through a bad divorce, or he's got some real problems with his boss, and or he's doing something else. And we'd have what we call an access agent to tell us all about the target. Well, nowadays, people go on Facebook or on LinkedIn, especially Facebook, and they put all kinds of things about themselves on there that they probably shouldn't. And it's like, we study that very carefully to see what they're doing. Maybe something as innocent as they're going to play tennis at a certain club. Well, now we know where they go. We know they play tennis. And guess what? We show up with a tennis racket and we're going to go, try and get a game with them. On LinkedIn, that is a high priority targeting mechanism. So many people are there, they'll have something saying looking for work. And so you can imagine that foreign intelligence services, such as the Russians or the Chinese or the Cubans, are looking to see now who has had access, who has been a member of the intelligence community and is now looking for work. And they would then call up and propose what we call a commercial relationship. By that, they would hire somebody, you've got exactly the skills we need. We're having a big conference and we'd be willing to pay you $3,000 or $4,000 as a honorarium to come and give a talk to my group. And somebody's saying, wow, $3,000 or $4,000 to come give an unclassified talk. And so they do that. And then we take it on down the road where, now we'd like you to maybe give us some expert advice on this particular situation, and we'll pay you $3,000 a day as a consulting fee. So it becomes an excellent targeting mechanism, commercial targeting mechanism. No mention is made of the fact that you're an intelligence officer and you're trying to recruit the person until it's way too late and they've gotten used to the money. They've gotten used to the fact that they're now probably selling classified information, things like that. And it's a slippery road. It's like that TV series Breaking Bad. You're just going down that slope. I mean, we've used mechanisms like that in the past, and I know that our adversaries are using them against us. I've done it myself, where I'd have a great lunch with somebody, and the next time I say, I took the liberty of writing up what you told me, and I sent it to my headquarters in Washington. And this morning when I came in, they told me that I had a $2,000 exceptional performance award for what you told me. And I don't feel right taking the entire money. How about if we split that and I'll give you $1,000 because we're such a good team. And I'd slip $1,000 in an envelope across under a menu to the guy. And he's thinking, well, that wasn't that sensitive. If Jim will pay that much for this, maybe if I give him a little juicier stuff, he'll pay me even more. Seemed to work.
Yeah.
And then the other new thing we have, by the way, is artificial intelligence. Okay. Yeah, everybody's talking about AI. A lot of people don't know what it means. I'm not sure that I know what it means, but I do know I had a conversation yesterday with a professor from Stanford who was asking me how to use artificial intelligence in my work. And I said, well, it would be great for a targeting collection mechanism to know everything there is to know out there on targets that we're going after. And it could be just the unclassified information, but then putting together what is a targeting package, based on inputs from some very well-renowned psychologists and psychiatrists on the motivations for espionage, and just, giving you an artificial intelligence produced targeting package. If you combine that with the classified holdings, all of the things we know through either human intelligence or signals intelligence or cyber intelligence, it could be a very devastating package, a very devastating tool. So I encourage this Stanford professor to get in touch with law enforcement, to get in touch with the intelligence community, and propose how he would use artificial intelligence to put together these packages. And I do think it would be devastatingly effective. Now, the other use of AI, of course, is to mimic something that's not you. I mean, I've been told that AI can create something that sounds like you, looks like you, and you could use that for all kinds of insidious reasons.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm working on a paper right now where the cartels, Mexican cartels, are recruiting foreign special forces soldiers, a lot of them from Colombia, where they recruit them to work in lemon and avocado fields to do the security to protect the crabs. But when they get there, they take their passport and they sequester them in a hotel room for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they send them to the different locations where they are fighting the government. One of the cases that I'm writing about is a retired first-class sergeant, special forces, and they were preparing some explosives, and one of the explosives went off and he got injured really, really severe. Then he thought that if he asked at the hospital to be sent back to Colombia with the help of the police, that the police will inform the cartels, and then subsequently he will be killed and never arrive in Colombia. Luckily, he was able to escape, and now he lives in an undisclosed location in Colombia, and he's now helping others not to allow to be enticed by money, the $15,000 contracts, the $20,000 contracts a month, because the reality behind that is that they're going to use all of your knowledge to fight in a war that doesn't belong to you and to kill soldiers and police officers in a foreign land. And I call it hybrid intelligence. What we are going through right now is hybrid intelligence. Mm-hmm. Where you're being attacked by all of intelligence agencies in different directions. LinkedIn is a perfect example of one of the biggest recruiting tools for foreign spy agencies, because everybody puts all of their background, so they have almost a selection of targets.
I agree with you 100%, William. I used to be a consultant for the Department of Energy, which runs our nuclear weapons program. I worked for their Office of Intelligence and Counterintelligence, and we had some cases of some of the nuclear scientists that were posting their resumes out there, glad to work. We had one, we have what we call the secure transportation component of DOE. They're the ones who absolutely transport those nuclear weapons from one site to another. So you couldn't have a more sensitive job. And we found at least one driver in this program. He's on LinkedIn and his caption is, "I'll do anything for money." Just sad. I was thinking, we need to talk to this guy, tell him to take this down. We've got to keep an eye on him. But you're right. It's a very, very rich targeting mechanism. I mean, the only reason people are on LinkedIn is for professional connections. And that's exactly what the foreign intelligence agencies are looking to do under the guise of something else. They'll contact you and have you do an innocent paper on something, have you do a consulting thing. They get you hooked on this thing, just like you talked about the special forces people in Latin America that are working for the drug cartels. And it's a bait and switch. and they'll get you there where it's too late.
Are there any misconceptions around CIA officers and people in the agency that you would like to correct? Hollywood portrays, all of these officers going, shooting people in foreign nations and running around amok. And it really, that's not really the job.
No, it's not. It's not. It's the job at its best is a very human job of, going after a target with access to information. I'd say 95, 99% of the television programs and movies and streaming series, they're entertaining, but that is not what we do. I mean, now I won't deny that there are times when it was extremely exciting. We would do what we call physical access operations, where we break into a target's office or apartment in order to photograph and steal things. And that gets your adrenaline pumping. Or there are times when you're going up against to recruit a terrorist, and that can get your adrenaline pumping too. But what the movies and the television portrays is highly unrealistic. I watched a recent one, one that I was just recording all the things that were wrong with it. And I had a list of 3 or 4 things that just in the first episode this would never happen. And so in my novels, I try and make them as realistic as I can. The only thing I do to compress is I compress the time scale. Because if we did it at the real speed of an intelligence operation, it can take months, it could take years. My team and I brought down the AQCon nuclear weapons network, and that took almost 10 years. So, it makes for exciting, thrilling thing to tell, but it was over a 9 or 10 year period. So, these things are, again, you have to have a lot of patience, and viewers wouldn't have that kind of patience. Now you can make something exciting. I've seen some great television shows, great stories like John le Carré's Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And the ones that always interest me the most are the ones that focus on the human angle, not the what I call the spy toys, the guns, the fast cars, the all kinds of things like that. Those are toys. And I'm more interested in the intricate relations with human beings.
What are the risks of unchecked surveillance and intelligence overreach?
We call that ubiquitous technical surveillance. I know exactly what you're talking about. I chaired a committee on that a couple of years ago, and we had a classified briefing that we were talking to some industry leaders about this, because we can't, in the U.S. government, we can't do all of the technical things ourselves. We have to, invest in trusted companies that can basically help us overcome ubiquitous technical surveillance. Now, the one point I made is if we find it a challenge, so do the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians and the Cubans. It's a challenge for them too. So American technology is typically the best in the world. Let's keep it the best in the world, and let's make sure that we're always on the forefront of using it, and frankly, how to defeat it. How to get around surveillance. The Mossad has a rule of thumb on the best counterintelligence is swiftness, meaning you get in and you get out before they understand exactly what's going on, and their systems have tipped them to something. So swiftness frequently can overcome technology.
Yeah, I saw the operation they just recently with the beepers and the phones.
Brilliant. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
Right. Masterpiece of work. One of the things that worries me the most is a lot of people are into technology. And I do a lot of surveys in offices, buildings, and for corporations regarding that they could have the entire place secure, but they have technology that comes from China, from other countries, including TVs, computers, routers, phones, and these wireless systems that you could talk and they could turn on the lights. But all of those gadgets could become the microphone inside your office. They could take photographs of you. Some of the TVs could even film you
Right.
with the TV off.
You're 100% correct. I mean, basically, you'd be broadcasting to Beijing or broadcasting to Moscow or to Havana all of your deepest, darkest secrets, because they have some inexpensive technology and they've got a back door in it, and they've got microphones or cameras or whatever. And you're 100% correct. But let me make another point about that. You could have the best technical defenses in the world, the best cyber defenses in the world. But if I or someone recruits an insider in your company or in your organization, that's like having, I don't care how wide the moat is around your castle. If I control the drawbridge operator, if I've got somebody inside, it doesn't matter what all your technical defenses are, because they're already inside and they can give me exactly what I want. So rather than investing all your money in all this fancy technical stuff, you really ought to take a look at the insider threat and how that can be the game changer or the game stopper.
Yeah, one of the things that I practice for many years, I pick up people's garbage.
Yeah, right.
If
I know
about a target, I mean, I pick up their garbage first. In the garbage, I could have their DNA print. I could have so many things, and it's legal because there's no expectation of privacy once you put it in the sidewalk.
There was a KGB officer who operated in Washington, and his nickname was Trash Man. And he would go to defense contractors and pick up some of the diagrams of things that weren't exactly classified, because it might have been an early design of a stealth fighter or something. Still, it's helpful, and it shows you where the defense contractor is. But Trash Man, this Russian KGB officer, would go around and empty, just like you were talking about, empty all the trash. But also, you're right, they could get DNA, they could get all kinds of indications of what you're working on and about the people too. Let's say you threw away you bought your lottery tickets or your whatever, you various things that shows that you're a gambler, or that shows that you've got a high liquor bill, or shows other things about you that are very revealing. So you're right, Trash Man can frequently provide some invaluable intelligence. I remember the Israelis had a penetration of a covert nuclear facility, and they just stunned me with this video of inside this nuclear facility. And it had been taken by a janitor. And the janitor went around with a concealed camera and took pictures all over a very sensitive facility. So in essence, the Trash Man was the spy.
Right. Over the years, the CIA have seen its share of the same way you use the techniques to recruit agents from other countries. So have other countries recruited people within the agency and other intelligence agencies in the country. Is there a way to be able to lower the amount of people that get trapped due to alcoholism, maybe drug use, maybe they going broke, maybe they're having a lot of personal issues? Is there a way that other employees within the agency could say something is going on here?
Well, I agree 100%. In fact, for the 7 years I was working for Department of Energy Intelligence and Counterintelligence, I went around to every national lab in our country numerous times and gave personal stories of how I recruited people much like themselves, people who never dreamt that they would become a spy until something went wrong in their life, and I was right there to recruit them. So I'm telling them, here's what a recruiter like myself does. The Chinese, the Russians, the Cubans, the Iranians, they do the same thing. So let me tell you some stories, and I would give very detailed stories about how I meet somebody and how over time I noticed the stress in their lives. As I said earlier in the program, I never recruited happy people. I recruited people under stress. I mean, happy people, they're not going to betray their country. They don't need to do that. It's the people that are in trouble, the people who are under stress, people who are having family issues, people who are having drinking issues or drug issues. That's all stressful. And so I would give these very, detailed. I eliminate the country who the nationality of who I was going after or where, but I would give very detailed stories on how I recruited this person. And that seemed to be pretty effective rather than, as I said, rather than putting up the 10 commandments of do's and don'ts for counterespionage, here's some things that really happened. And that's what you need to be attuned to be sensitive to be aware of people in your organization. And just remember that you should always have an open door and you don't have to give people everything they want, but to be willing to listen to them and to be compassionate. We used to have observation posts around Russian embassies, so we'd watch them coming and going. And at 5 o'clock, if three of the Russians are coming out and they're slapping each other on the back and they're going off to the pub, we ignore them. What we're looking for is the guy that comes out a few minutes later and he's all by himself. He's a loner. He doesn't feel like he's part of the team. So think about in your own organization, who feels like they're alienated and not part of the team?
In a lot of ways, whistleblowers that are shunned by organizations could become easy targets. That's true. And then sometimes, to our own disadvantage, we ignore people who have some good information. A classic case is, you may recall, the John Walker spy case. Oh yeah, I follow it. I was in the military at the time in his first case, and
yep.
then he recruited his own son.
Yeah, and his brother.
And
so he did such damage to the U.S. Navy that it was estimated that had we gone to war with the Soviet Union, we might have lost because of the way he compromised our cryptographic systems and things. But what you may not know about is how we got onto him was his ex-wife was irritated because he had gotten behind on his alimony payments, and she called the FBI 2 or 3 times. Now, she had a drinking problem, so they thought she was just a drunk, but she's saying, my husband is a spy, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, they listened to her, and they went after John Walker and the others.
Right. There is also a thing about foreign embassies. And, I do a lot of traveling, and sometimes, you go and knock on doors, try to speak to somebody. They're not very friendly. They're not open-minded to a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And I think that if people go knocking on your door, you should at least listen, because you might be surprised what they have to say. And
well, we had a classic case during the Cold War. We had, you may have heard of a man named Victor Matroikin. He was a KGB archivist. He got very disaffected with the KGB and with the Soviet Union, and he recorded all these details of KGB operations worldwide. And then he tried to defect to us at one of our foreign embassies. And we had a chief of station there who was a complete idiot. And he turned the guy away twice, thinking that he was a provocation or an imposter. So instead, Matroikin went down the street and volunteered to the British. And it was one of the most significant espionage, recruitments we've ever had. The guy had a treasure of information on KGB operations. And here he had been turned away by some idiot, a colleague of mine, in a foreign country. That was, you've got to be listening to people. And, sometimes you have to suspend the disbelief and say, okay, prove what you're saying is right.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that they should do away with the age limit to join the agency as an agent? Because it cuts down a lot of people that are very valuable, that could be of value to the agency, whether it's the FBI, whether it's U.S. Customs. That age limit of 35, 37, that you have to be out by 55 if you don't, they give you 2 years if you were in the military. Don't you think that they should change? Maybe don't give you a full retirement, but hire you and just let you retire at 55 or let you
I,
retire.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people who are in their late 30s, early 40s even would make wonderful CIA officers or FBI special agents. And if I think they do bend the rules some, if you have special skills or special languages, they do bend it a little bit. But I do think we should get away from some artificial barrier and just look at the person himself. Now, I know why we do it, because we're going to put a lot of money into training people and things. And if you're joining at age 50, we at most we're going to have 10 to 15 years of your contributions. But I think we need to be a little more flexible about that, and not be hard and fast. Well, you turned 36, so we're not interested. Now, that's kind of silly.
Yeah, in Latin America is different. You graduate college at the age of 22.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have like a doctor's degree at 25, right? And when you apply for a job, they tell you, come back when you have some experience. And when you come back when you have the experience, they don't hire you because you're too old.
Right. Well, I mentor a lot of young people who are interested in the intelligence community as careers. And I get a lot of young people, I mean, really young people in their early 20s. And I said, well, really, they're going to be looking for somebody in their mid to late 20s to early 30s, because we're looking for people that are a little more mature, have a little more experience, hopefully have a foreign language of some sort, who've lived abroad and do not get scared by living abroad, who are, just more mature and with life experience. Because these kids, that's one thing when they're 18 or 19 or 20, but they're totally different people when they're 25 or 26. So when I was hired, I was 28 years old, and most of my fellow CIA classmates, they were in their mid to late 20s, early 30s. I think we had one guy who was 21 or 22, but that was the exception.
What is the graduation rate compared to the drop rate when people join the agency?
Well, I've heard some horror stories recently, and I'm not going to cite a figure because it was a person who's on the inside who confided in me, but they had a fairly high failure rate of graduates in our training program. And I'm not sure if it was because the training was more severe or because we had hired a bunch of people that maybe shouldn't have been accepted in the first place. I don't know. When I went through the training, I think we had 5 or 6 people out of a class of 40 that were not certified. Now, again, some people quit, they self-select out, they figured this is not really for me. And that's good. That takes a lot of guts, a lot of courage to admit, I'm not cut out for this. I'd rather do something else. In fact, it turns out one of my classmates, he self-selected out. He went to work for the State Department, and he served 3 times as an ambassador. So he really found his point of excellence, which was good. That took guts to quit the clandestine service and become a real State Department officer, and I admire that. But I don't know what the current attrition rate is, but we spend a lot of money recruiting and training people, and we need to keep them. I've heard that one of the biggest reasons why people quit, and this is true in corporate America too, it's not for the money, it's because of poor management. And I think that's sad, that's tragic if we're driving people out. But I read a figure the other day that it might be as high as 70% of the people who quit, the reason cited most often is that they had a bad manager. That's really sad.
Do you think is there nepotism, or is there a lack of candor and tact when talking to another subordinate? There's a lot of people that when they get up to a certain level, they don't know how to talk to their subordinates. They embarrass them in front of others. They, badmouth them in the hallways. Is that a part of the culture of the intelligence?
It's not part of the culture, but unfortunately, human nature being what it is, it happens. I've seen it. And I've seen people who, as you know, the old expression, they know how to manage up. They know how to treat their boss. But boy, managing down, they're terrible. I mean, there are people like that. I think we avoid most of them. I think most CIA officers, I think we do better than most organizations. But unfortunately, there are jerks in every organization, and sometimes you get somebody whose ego is bloated, and they think it makes them look big if they treat their subordinates poorly. Well, that's stupid. I always operated under the principle that if my subordinates make me look good, man, am I going to treat them right? Because they want to work for me, they are striving to give me their best, and I will get them interviews with the director, I will get them promoted, I will get them exceptional performance awards. To me, it was almost like a profit sharing scheme. If we do well together as a unit, I'm going to share the glory with you. It's not going to be my glory, it's going to be our glory.
Let's talk about the difference between being an employee and being a contractor for the agency, because there's a misconception. It's a lot of people that might not meet all of the qualifications to be an officer, but they come in through a back door, which is the door of the contractors. They play a lot of different roles, especially after the beginning of the war on terror. How do you view that? How do you navigate, the vetting process between people that are vetted so hardly, when they are regular employees, and when you have people coming through a back door, might not be as stringent process to vet them?
Well, most of the contractors I know, including myself, I was a contractor after I retired after 25 years. I became a contractor for almost 18 or 19 years. We after the war, when 9/11 happened, we didn't have enough people, and so we had no choice. We had to get people with skills, and there were a lot of retired CIA officers or DIA officers or FBI special agents or whomever that had the skill set, but they were no longer federal employees. So we employed them as contractors. And usually they are held to the same security standards that other people are. Now, I know sometimes we would hire younger contractors, but I'm not going to make a hard and fast thing about that the contractors are not as good as the federal employees. A lot of times they have specialized skills that we really need badly. And we don't have a choice. If we want this done, we've got to have some contractors in there. And they're subject to the same security and counterintelligence rules that the rest of us are. And they have to, in order to maintain their clearances, they're subject to periodic polygraph tests. They're subject to the annual statement of income and financial disclosure forms. We try our best to keep them, to the same standards as the people on the inside who are federal employees. Now, are there occasionally bad contractors? Yeah, there are, and occasionally there's bad federal employees.
When you work overseas in an agency capacity, and you're working with foreign governments or foreign leaders, whether in the communities where the war on terror was being fought, how do you navigate who you could trust in you in a pit of snakes, and you don't know which one is the snake that's poisonous?
So you develop a perception that you know who you can trust, and of course, trust is the foundation of any relationship, especially of espionage. Now, certain foreign governments that we are with, like President Reagan used to say, maybe we trust, but we verify. There's only so far you can trust some governments as opposed to other governments. Frequently, though, at least in my experience, a lot of the people that I would work with in liaison, they admired and liked the CIA, and we had common goals. And so you try and get them to make sure they're on our side and part of our team. But you have to, be aware that sometimes their national interests may not coincide with ours. They may not be hostile to ours, but they may not coincide with ours exactly. And again, to be honest with some people and say, well, we're going to run this one, without you on this time.
Let's talk a little bit about the neglect on the part of a lot of governments to Latin America, and it came back to bite us. where we were fighting in other countries, whether Africa, whether the Middle East, whether Eurasia, wherever, we have these conflicts, we put a lot of money and effort to that, and we neglected our backyard. And the narcotics production in Colombia after, the president Biden did some type of negotiation with President Petro, where he turned off the satellites that were monitoring the cultivation of coca, the plantations, and it grew 4 times more than when Pablo Escobar and the regular cartels were in charge. They then expanded the negotiation, and it went to the Cartel de los Soles in Venezuela, which is an organization within the government. The Maduro regime did what Pablo Escobar dreamt about doing, was have a president that is a narco president in charge of a narco state with praxis like El Tren de Aragua and other trends within Venezuela. They have about 8 different trends, which means vehicles. They took it out of the Cuban book and formed what was called the colectivos. They armed them to suppress the people, and in that same training inside military bases, they trained the Tren de Aragua. When the government took over the prison in Tocoron, they found thousands of rounds and weapons that were marked as part of the inventory of the Venezuelan military. They found hundreds of computers, and they were already cultivating Bitcoin within the prison. And all types of things. They built a tunnel that went out to the lake, and from the lake, that's how most of the higher echelons escaped. Their plan was brisas bolivarianas, which was the Bolivarian winds, which was the Tren de Aragua was used to destabilize democracies around Latin America, the United States, and now they are in Europe. One of the reasons they went into Europe was because Venezuelans do not need a visa to get into Spain. And once they're in Spain, with a $500 ticket and a little bit of money for a week of, hotels and food, they spread all throughout Europe and Euro-Asia. Do you think that neglect should be changed, that we should take care of what is close to our home and not worry so much of what's happening so many thousands and thousands of miles away, where we will see the danger coming?
Well, I definitely would agree, William. We need to pay closer attention to the Western Hemisphere. I mean, the Monroe Doctrine and be aware of foreign influences. And certainly I'm very concerned about states such as Venezuela and some others that have become narco republics or narco dictatorships. But we can't ignore the Chinese threat, the Russian threat, and other things around the world. We need to basically increase the intelligence community's focus on both of these problems. I know I'm not prioritizing, but I'm saying we can't just look close. We can't be isolationists and look just at the Western Hemisphere. But I agree with you. We need to pay more attention to it because it's biting us in the rear end daily. Like last year, I think I read the latest figure was there were over 85,000 fentanyl deaths of Americans. We lost 3,000 people at 9/11. Well, 85,000 people whose lives tragically ended because of fentanyl, and that's just fentanyl. It's gosh knows what with the other drugs.
Right, they spraying fentanyl in the marijuana kids smoke. They spraying it into the cocaine.
Yeah, I know.
If they put it in the pills, whether you buy a Percocet pill, you might have a little dot, and you die. I mean, because I tell kids when I talk at schools, I tell them, your dealer has a dealer that has a dealer. Before you put that in your mouth, know that it's not what you're buying, or what you think you're buying, but you might be buying debt.
The essential challenge we're facing, frankly, is a demand problem. The supply is always going to be there as long as the demand is here. So we need to increase drug education, like what you're doing, and dissuading kids, young adults, from doing this. These drug organizations, they would not be, they're in it for money. They're in it only for the business. And so therefore we need to realize that as long as there's a demand, there's always going to be a supply. In fact, the price will just go up. So I agree with you 100%.
Talking about China, China has been in the forefront of not only getting control of most of the ports in Latin America and in other countries, but they are buying land near our military bases.
I've read about that. That's very troubling. And I hate to do this, William, but I've got another phone call I've got to go on. If you want to continue this at another time, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so we'll do a second part to the show. I really appreciate your time, and it was an honor to have you here. It's a learning experience to me. You have my number. I don't have your number.
I will send you an email with my coordinates, and also one or two of my colleagues that you might like to have on your program.
Definitely. Whoever you recommend, I'd be more than glad to speak to them. I'm at 62, I'm right now studying to take the LSAT to go to law school.
Good for you. Good for you.
Not because I want to be a practicing attorney, but I promised my mother. She raised 2 children. My brother became a doctor, and my mother raised us as a single parent. And she passed away 3 years ago.
Okay.
So I promised her before she was suffering from what they call vascular dementia, which is a different type of dementia. And I promised her that I will graduate law school. So,
well, good. God bless you. I hope, it's a hard road, but anyways, I respect that. So let's plan on another part to this, and I will send you an email with some suggested speakers, but I have to say goodbye for right now.
Thank you, my brother, and send my love and regards to your lovely wife and family.
Thank you very much, William. Take care.
This concludes today's episode. I'd like to thank Mr. Jim Lawler for his insightful reflection, his role as a mentor and instructor, and the stellar achievements that have earned him some of the CIA's most prestigious awards. It is a privilege to spot your contribution and to learn from your experience. Thanks also to our listeners for tuning in and being part of the Equalizer community. The support drives the show forward. Please subscribe, share, and let us know your thoughts. Please follow me in the links provided in the screen. A heartfelt thanks to Equalizer production team. Your dedication, skill, and creativity make every episode possible and every story heard. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time on the Equalizer podcast. Stay safe and God bless you.